Day, fellow scapers. My name's Deck, but please call me Hobo, and welcome back to my channel. In one of my prior videos, I mentioned that one cycling Seiryu went a long way to being able to do 4 Elite Dungeon 1 runs per hour, and I have to say with Necromancy, it is so freaking easy. Information on how to smash the Elite Dungeons can be found in a link in the description, but for now, let's focus on one cycling this Serpentine beast. This guide will be focusing on how to improve your kill times, and I'll be honest, the expectation is that you'll be familiar with the mechanics of the boss already. Now I will say, the key to ensuring that you are prepared for a one cycle is to make sure that you're prepared for the second phase, as that's the most important, and that everything that you need is off cooldown and ready for use. So I'm going to break this down into 2 phases, the first being battling Seiryu, and the second one battling the crystals. But first let's talk equipment. While Seiryu is a poisonable boss, the black crystals on his back aren't. So for the sake of simplicity, I won't be including poison switches for this guide. So instead, I would recommend full robe of the first necromancer for this boss, as we'll be using our familiars at every stage of the battle. In terms of using weapons, you will absolutely want to be using tier 95s. The reason for this is that you want as many souls stored in your lantern as possible when you make the climb onto his back, and you want as many specs as you can get your hands on. Accuracy is very good here, so a Reaver's ring is the best ring for the job, though you will likely be able to get away with another best in class type ring, like the Ring of Death. I'd recommend you use a grimoire because the kill lasts around 2 minutes, so it won't really take massive drains on the amount of charges, although I will say a full book would likely be just as fine. I'm using a Zuck type cape for this because Death Skulls will be a staple in our basic rotation. Now in your pocket slot you can put pretty much anything in there. I opt for the Grasping Rune pouch for the prayer buff, but you'll have to ensure that you bring your Nexus with you with all of your Necro runes. I have an EOF with the Death Grasp spec stored in it from the Death Guard. In your inventory, you'll want the standard Overload and Renewals. You can use Poison too if you'd like. As I said, Seiryu is poisonable. I choose not to waste the sip though, as I never needed it. I have an offhand switch that's not Necromancy. I will say anything in this slot will do as long as it's a quick way to unequip your Soulbound Lantern and re-equip it quickly as well. I have Dominion Mines for this in my inventory, however I cannot stress this enough, you absolutely do not need them here. I have this in my setup for pushing kill times, but maybe for your first couple of times it may help you to nail it first time every time. My best here is 1 minute 36, and this really helps for pushing those times as well. I have an Excalibur as well as a Shard, but these again aren't necessary, they are just a nice to have. I use Von Bombs here. Smoke Cloud Roots are nice as well, but not essential, and an Adrenaline Renewal Potion. If you aren't tick perfect with this potion, it's not a problem really, but if you struggle with it constantly, maybe consider getting better at using it, or alternatively swap to a replenishment potion. In terms of relics, I use the Berserker's Fury, I use Conservation of Energy, and I use Persistent Rage. All of these are something that I use in all of the dungeon runs just because they are pretty much best in slot relics. For perks, I have standard best in slot. I've linked the optimal perks in the description. Basic or advanced perks will suffice for this method. And for a summon, I use the Calgarian Demon. And for auras, I use Vampirism, for which I use to run the entire dungeon. However, if you're struggling to make the kill times, feel free to use the Inspiration or the Marjorat's Aura. So let's talk about how you start the fight. You'll see me here sipping my potions, activating my grimoire and ensuring the demon spec is running. I'll pre-summon all of my conjures and command both the ghost and the skeleton. After this, I will use the optional Ingenuity of the Humans, followed by a Surge and Dive combo in front of Seiryu and target him with a Smoke Cloud and a Von Bomb. I personally start the fight using Death Skulls, followed by a Bloat. I will then use Touch of Death into Soul Sap. Now for this, I like to prioritise Soul Sap as an ability, so I can use Volley of Souls in both the first and the second phase. After this, I will juggle my Adrenaline and use all of my specs during this phase relatively early on, so they come off of cooldown early in phase 2. I will also use Command Skeleton as often as possible, and instead of resonancing the first breath, I will typically tend to use Divert to boost my adrenaline, as my HP never falls into dangerous levels in this fight, as it is so quick. The key is to make sure that when you climb on Seiryu's back, you're doing so with full adrenaline. Some stacks of Necrosis and Living Death and Split Soul on cooldown. So let's fast forward to 1,300,000 HP. At this point, I'll start building my souls to 3, and I'll use the last of my command skeletons. When they've both been achieved and effectively spent, I will unequip my lantern using my switch. This is because it will dismiss the conjures, and they will not typically climb on Seiryu's back with you, so they need to be resummoned when you get up there. I would tend to do this as close to 1.2 million as possible. Once this has been done and Seiryu is climbable, I would look to cast Invoke Death, and also manually cast your Calgarian Demon spec before you climb. This is because the familiar also doesn't follow you up, and you want as much of the critical spec in place as possible whilst you're up there, and you don't want to waste time by casting Invoke when you get up there as well. When his head comes to a rest and he's climbable, go ahead and climb up on the right hand side. I personally prefer the right hand side, as the hitboxes of Seiryu's antlers make it more difficult to climb up and you may misclick. Now on to phase 2. You're going to want to target cycle and use Soul Sap and a Von Bomb on the first crystal. After this, you'll summon your conjures. If Death Skulls is available, use it and then build to full adrenaline. Use Command Skeleton and a few basics if you need to, and soon your first crystal should be dead. If you get to 100% adrenaline, by all means use Living Death again, but don't waste the Death Skulls on a half dead crystal, instead prioritise using a Finger of Death. The Invoke incantation should finish it off around 30k HP, and that's when I cast Invoke again and move on to the next crystal. I hit it with another Von Bomb, and definitely, if you haven't done it here, use Living Death. Follow up with a Touch of Death and a Renewal Potion, then move on to a Death Skulls and Command Skeleton again if necessary. By all means, use one of your empowered Finger of Deaths, and again, soon enough, the crystal should die to the incantation. Again, use Invoke when this happens, and you're going to move on to the next crystal. At this point, the jelly should be getting very close to Seiryu, and that's fine. They're going to heal him 6 times in succession, and it's during this time that we're going to employ every buff that we possibly can. We're going to use our Command Ghost. We're definitely going to be using Split Soul here, and if possible, drop a Bloat and build back up to 100% adrenaline. As the last of the 6 heals goes through, it's time to drop every single spec that we have available to us. You're going to use Death Skulls, followed by a Volley of Souls, into a Finger of Death, and then Death Grasp. If you have mines, by all means use them, but I've never needed them until I started pushing my kill times. At this point, the crystal should die, and hopefully you've completed your first 1 cycle Seiryu. Big congratulations. If you want to push your kill times further, you can start by playing about with, for example, building souls at wars, building Necrosis stacks, and even using Split Soul at the beginning of the fight, as it will likely be on cooldown towards the end of phase 1, but come off of cooldown in phase 2. But that's it for Seiryu. Go slap that snake. If you found this video helpful, by all means please drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and just maybe I'll catch you in another video. Happy scaping!